mid-60s, he talked a lot about the beginner's mind. The beginner's mind was a kind of pure state. You know, we do things for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes to build a resume, sometimes to get a check. But on this project, each of you had a beginner's mind, something that was a pure intention about this. You each came into it for a different reason. But I want you to try to trace back to your highest and most noble impulse for taking on this project. And Kareem, I'm going to start with you.
I would say that I got involved in this project back when I was in high school because I took part in a mentoring program between my junior and senior year in high school that was set up to challenge us how to make Harlem a better place, my neighborhood in New York that I grew up in. And at that point, I didn't know that much about the history of Harlem. It was that summer that I found out about what Harlem meant to American culture, and especially for Black Americans. And I also found out about a basketball team named the Wrens that was a championship team. But I didn't get into very much depth. I was very busy being 17 years old and doing all the things that 17-year-olds do, and not really looking for any depth, just trying to reach my maturity. So it took me a long time, but over the years I read more and more about the Harlem Renaissance and its significance to American culture. And by the time I finished playing professional basketball, I wanted to do something like this film and book. And I had the opportunity, Deborah encouraged me to do that. And she said that people need to know about this. I was kind of skeptical about that, but I saw it as a great challenge, and it ended up that we hit the ball pretty hard. So that's how it happened.
Well, for me, I don't have to think about getting into a beginner's mind because I am a beginner. This was my first film, so thank you. When I started doing this, I didn't know anything about Black history other than just knowing from Kareem, and I didn't know anything about producing a film. So I used my knowledge of 3D, which is my background, and we met this incredible artist named Justin Lua, whose art you saw in the film. So for me, it was taking the knowledge of 3D and art and matching it to the history that Kareem and Anna were creating for the film.
Mine is pretty simple. I think it's that history is written and rewritten by the victors. And what's really fascinating is that it isn't often true, or parts are left out. And it fascinates me to work on those parts that are left out and introduce people, and myself, by the way, because I knew nothing about the Wrens until I talked to Kareem, to forgotten heroes.
When I was asked by Deborah to come aboard and do this, it was obviously, well, we've got 3 weeks to do it. We need wall-to-wall music, and Kareem Abdul Jabbar's, it's his film and his story, and obviously this scared me and intrigued me, of course. But when, first of all, as he knows already, I'm a Boston Celtics fan. But when I saw that first clip of Bill Russell, I was like, I'm doing it. But after that, I got to talk to Kareem. This was kind of a relationship that was really kind of a broad picture relationship. We just talked a couple of times. And I asked him about the kind of music he loved, and he said Cab Calloway, Count Basie, 1930s, the two-beat feel of big band jazz, And that's the kind of music that my dad introduced me to and grew up with. So I got the love feeling right away. I love the way basketball works. I love the sound of basketball, the rhythm of the dribbling and the running and the passing and the sounds of basketball. And I love, you know, the weird two-tone sound of the 24-second clock and Johnny Most and the rhythm of his voice. And, I love the sound of basketball and I love the sound of big band music. So it was really, really easy to do. And I really enjoyed it. Every time I see the film, I enjoy it more because I just see other things that I was too busy writing the thing to appreciate the film.
I just wanted to add one more thing. I met Anna Waterhouse when she was teaching script writing. And I took her class because I was going to write this script. And I found out about 4 weeks into the class that I'm not a script writer. And I said, uh-oh. So that's how our relationship began, is she ended up helping with this script quite a bit.
I want to stay with your answer for just a moment, because in reading the book, I was moved by what happened to you in your junior season with Coach Donahue, and the shifting of the tectonic plates of your life that next summer. Really a kind of search for lore and wisdom and identity and purpose, and it's like this hurt triggered this search in some way, and something deep shifted in you that summer. And then kind of observing everything else that was happening in the culture that summer impacted too. You're 17 years old, you're interviewing Dr. Martin Luther King. That's pretty extraordinary. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, at a certain point, my high school coach and I had a problem. He misused, he used the wrong words to try to motivate me. And it made me think that maybe I couldn't trust him. And it made me feel that I needed to find out what was what in the world so that I could make a lot more decisions on my own, because I'd always given myself over to whoever was my coach, mentor, teacher prior to that point. So that summer of 1964, it was a big change because I found out exactly what my community meant, what the Harlem community meant, why Louis Armstrong was an icon all over the world. I didn't understand it, but at that point I understood it. It was very riveting for me to read about the history of Harlem. For those of you who are not familiar, Louis Armstrong learned how to play the trumpet in New Orleans and was a very adequate trumpet player down there. But nobody really knew who he was. He played in a couple of bands. But when he came to Harlem and played at Connie's Inn and was heard by a writer for the New York Herald Tribune who said, there's this brilliant guy playing the trumpet up in Harlem. I didn't get his name. People came up there and said, who's this guy? And he went from there around the world and has become a worldwide icon. So Harlem really was a means for Black Americans to come to prominence. Talented people came there and got their start. Duke Ellington brought his band there from Washington, D.C., and they ended up being the house band at the Cotton Club. And from there, their record sold. And again, they went around the world. Josephine Baker started playing cabarets in Manhattan. Went from there to Europe and wild Europe, and ended up staying in Europe for a long time until the Nazis actually ran her out of Paris when they conquered Paris. But up to that point, she was an icon, and she knew she wouldn't be tolerated by the Nazis. So Harlem really meant a lot to a lot of people politically. That's where the NAACP started, because Black Americans could organize and figure out how they were going to confront institutionalized racism without having to deal with fighting Jim Crow laws. It was a very special place in that sense. It was a sanctuary. You saw, we quoted somebody saying, the sight of Harlem gives Black Americans a feeling of comfort. It really did, because it was someplace they knew that they could actually be themselves and reach their aspirations. And that's something that I found out that summer. The program I was involved in, the mentor and founder of the program was Dr. John Henry Clark. He was a historian and sociologist, and he figured that Harlem youth needed to really get an idea of what they could do to make Harlem a better place. And he was friends with Dr. Martin Luther King. So during the course of the summer, he had Dr. King come and address the participants in the program. And this is less than a year after the March on Washington, when Dr. King gave his I Have a Dream speech. And he was really hot news. So the National Press Corps followed him everywhere he went. And for me, as a member of the journalism workshop for the program, they gave me press credentials and said, cover the event. So I remember one guy I knew from watching NBC all the time, Gabe Bershman. I think he still does things for NBC News. I saw these people's faces that I'd seen. I'm standing there with them. I got a chance to ask Dr. King a question, and that contact, at that moment, really, it changed my life, because it made me understand how important all of the things that Dr. King was associated with, how important those things were for me as a Black American and for our nation, which was trying to live up to the ideals and vision of people like Thomas Jefferson, who felt that all men were created equal. It really brought it home to me, and it changed my life forever.